Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today's video I want to cover CGC graded comic books. Lots of Star Wars books. I've got some amazing Spider-Man and a few other gems that I like to cover regularly just to see how prices are doing. And next week I'll cover the Comic Link auctions that are going right now. There were some big boy books in that auction. I was going to bid on one of them, but I fell asleep. So so I think I'm good for this month to not bid on anything on Comic Link. And it's probably a good thing because I spent so much money at Hakes. As I've told you guys already, I'm already stressing about trying to pay those bills. But let's go ahead and take a look. And they're not all 9.8s. I've got some Silver Age Spider-Man books that I want to cover first. And this was a great deal from Sparkle City Comics. This is Amazing Spider-Man #1, which obviously is, I mean, this is a big book, all right? Amazing Fantasy 15 is the first appearance of Spider-Man. That usually costs, even in low grade, the price of a car. Okay, it's very expensive. This one is also really expensive, but I think I could make it work at this kind of grade level. I don't know if it'll ever happen or not, because I'd have to save up for a while for it, but second appearance of Spider-Man, the first appearance of Jameson, and Chameleon, the first Fantastic Four crossover comic, and the origin of Spider-Man retold. So this is a huge book, obviously, and very, very expensive and high grade. This was only a 1.8 with white pages. It sold in an auction for $6,100. Let's call that about $6,700 after taxes and things like that. So that's pretty much in line with Go Collect estimates. This book is, you know, obviously come down from the big highs during the COVID era, but it's still holding its value. It seems to kind of flatten out, and I think we'll start to see this one slowly creep up in price. So just a famous book, blue chip comic. You can't go wrong with it, but obviously very expensive, even in low grade, 1.8. Next up is one I do have in my collection, not in this grade. I do have an 8.0 off-white to white pages. This one was an 8.5 with white pages. And I wanted to track it to see what the price comparison was versus my 8.0. For my 8.0, I paid $2,100 for it several months ago, two months ago. This one is an 8.5 white pages, and it sold for $35.51. So I feel pretty good about where I am in terms of my entry point for my 8.0. But obviously, anytime you get white pages on some of these Silver Age Spider-Man books, you're going to be paying a significant premium. And that one obviously was the case with this one. This is the first appearance of Kingpin in comics, a pretty iconic cover from John Romita. Next up, this is one I wanted to bid on so bad. If I had the money, I did not. But this is Amazing Spider-Man #129, the first appearance of the Punisher. And this one was a signature series Stan Lee signed book, 8.0 with white pages. What a beauty. And that's kind of on my goal list for this year. If I can swing it maybe later this fall, would be a Silver Age or Bronze Age Spider-Man key issue. It doesn't have to be a 9.8 because it's just so expensive in 9.8s for these kind of books. But for an 8.0 with white pages, that's kind of right in line with what I'd like to have. Now, this one was an 8.0. It sold for $28.50. And as a reference point, I have a 9.4 with white pages for this book that I paid $3,900 for. So again, it's lower grade, but it is signed by Stan Lee. And so I thought $28.50 was a great buy. That's a price I would have paid in a heartbeat if I had the money. And I was watching it. I was tempted on it, but I decided to spend all my money at Hakes, and I had to let that one go. But that is kind of a goal. I wouldn't mind getting some sort of, you know, either Bronze or Silver Age lower grade book signed by Stan Lee. It would be really cool to have in the collection. Next up, this is the newsstand for ASM 238, the first appearance of Hobgoblin. And the newsstand typically is going around $2,300, and this one was no exception. $2,350 on this one. I think for a book like this that you can find pretty easily in either a direct or a newsstand, I'd probably avoid eBay just because of the taxes. If you go to Comic Link, there's one of these coming up almost every single month. Either if you gotta have a newsstand, it may not be every month. A direct edition, it's literally almost every month. One of these comes up in a 9.8 with white pages. So I would aim for Comic Link or Comic Connect to pick one of these up versus eBay. It's just going to be a lot cheaper after taxes and fees and everything. Even with the 15% buyer's premium on Comic Connect, I picked up a recent Silver Age Spider-Man book in lower grade. And I was pleasantly surprised because I thought I was going to have to pay sales tax on it, and I did not. So I don't know if that's for every state, but Comic Connect does not charge taxes either, just like Comic Link doesn't. And again, for something more common like this, you know, this is a pretty easy one to find in either direct or newsstand in a 9.8. But that's a good price, $23.50. But I think you can pay that price or less on some of these websites where you don't have to pay sales tax. Next up, ASM 300. This one sold for $3,500 in a buy it now situation, and that seems to be the going rate. There was one at auction in my last video coverage of eBay sales that sold in an auction for $3,800. So this one was $300 less in a buy it now. It was a really nice example as well. I looked up the high resolution scans on the CGC website, and it was a really clean copy. So I was tempted on it. I had it on my watch list, but because of the sales tax, I was like, Now, I could have bought it direct from Quality Comics. Quality Comics has their own website, and if you bought direct from them, you wouldn't have to pay eBay sales taxes. So, but this one did sell on eBay for $3,500 plus sales tax, which again, there was one that sold in an auction on eBay for $3,800. So at least you got it a little bit cheaper, but it seems like I've missed the window. It seems like I've missed the window on a 9.8 direct edition ASM 300 origin and first appearance of Venom. It got below $3,000 for a little while, and now it's more consistently at $3,400 to $3,800, both on eBay as well as alternative comic book auction houses. Next up is ASM 316 in a direct edition, a pretty famous Todd McFarlane Venom cover. I do have this one in my collection. Now's a good time to pick this one up. This one seems to be a little bit lower than where it had been going, which was $525 to $550. This one sold in a buy it now for $485. And even on some of the alternate websites, it's more like $450. So now's a good time to grab that one. It's pretty easy to find again. Every single month one of these comes up. And I just wanted to get it because I love the cover, and I'm a big Todd McFarlane fan for some of my ASM covers. So $485, good deal on that one. Next up is one I would like to grab, and I've talked to one of my Patreon supporters, Justin, who was like, I want to get this in a 9.8. I don't know whether to get the first print, direct edition, the first print newsstand, or the second print direct edition. And I said, just go for the newsstand. Everything else is pretty easy to find. Even the newsstand's easy to find. But if you're going to get one of these, my opinion is pony up for the newsstand edition, especially now while prices are well down. Even on Comic Link, one of these sold in the fives here recently. This one sold for $480. And this is a trusted seller that I bought from in the past. So really good deal on that one. $480 plus shipping on a newsstand edition of ASM 361, which is the first appearance of Carnage. Here's one that is bumped up in price. I picked this one up in an auction from Jeff's Collectible Empire, same grade, for about $300 about 2 or 3 months ago. This one sold in an auction for $406, so that's a good solid 30% higher. Now, in all fairness, this one did have a custom label, but to me, I don't really particularly care about custom labels. But it was the same grade, Web of Spider-Man 32. This is kind of a ongoing, I think, 6-part story between Spider-Man in his black costume and Kraven the Hunter, who obviously has a movie coming out later this fall, which I'm actually kind of excited about. Pretty much every Sony Spider-Man movie has sucked really bad. I'm looking at you, Madam Web. That one has been a complete bomb at the box office, but this one's going to be a pretty violent movie. It looks like an adult kind of R-rated movie. It looks pretty good, so I hope it's good. I don't know if it will be, but I'm probably going to go see that one in theater unless the critical reception is completely terrible. But Madam Web, I was actually wanting to see. I skipped it. I'm just going to wait for it on streaming. But Kraven, I could see maybe going in the theater to see it. And this is a pretty well-known Kraven story. It's not going to be covered in the movie or anything. It's going to be an origin story for Kraven. But this one is up. So I was surprised at this final sales price of $406, given that less than 2 months ago, I bought this exact same book, same grade, direct edition, for $305. This one sold for $406. I got a couple of Captain America books to keep an eye on. I thought this one was a good deal. This is Captain America 230. It's kind of a classic cover where Hulk is trying to smash Captain America, and he's using his shield to protect him, and he's kind of digging into the wall behind him. It's just kind of a cool cover. Now, during the heyday, during the comic book big peak prices, this one was going for significantly higher, like $800 or $900. This one is from 1979 and it sold for $399 in a buy it now situation. I had it on my watch list and I said, wow, that one has really dropped in price. And again, it's not a first appearance or a big, book. It's kind of a secondary book. I just love the cover. It's a really great cover featuring Hulk and Captain America having a little battle. And now's a good time to grab it. It's kind of a fairly low census count too, relative to some of the other books from the era. And then here's one I did just pick up on eBay. I didn't pick this one up. I picked up one in a buy it now. I paid a little bit more. I paid, I think, closer to $400. This one sold for $340 in an auction. This is Captain America Annual from 1986. This is a number 8, Captain America Annual number 8. This is a pretty awesome Mike Zeck cover. I wanted to get this book in a 9.8 because I had this one growing up and I loved it. It's one of my favorite comics. And I actually drew the comic when I was a kid and everything. I just loved it. It shows Wolverine and Captain America fighting. It's the first appearance of Overrider as well as Test One, 2 secondary characters that probably won't amount to anything. But it's just an awesome cover that kind of adds to my Mike Zeck cover collection. I've got a few Mike Zeck covers in my collection because he is one of my favorite artists from the 1980s. And $340 took that one home in a direct edition. For a newsstand, you're probably talking closer to $500. Next up, this was a beauty. This was a newsstand edition of G.I. Joe number 1, signed by Bob McLeod, who was the cover artist on G.I. Joe number 1. Newsstand edition as well in a 9.8 white page signature series. That one sold in an auction for $14.26. A direct edition standard blue universal label, you're probably talking in the $500 to $600 range now. It's come back down to earth a little bit, but for that newsstand signed by the cover artist, $14.26. I think for just a blue universal label newsstand, it's probably in the $1,100 to $1,200 range would be my guess right now. Next up is a newsstand edition of G.I. Joe 25, the first appearance of Zartan, kind of a secondary book. That one did sell in a buy it now situation for $350, best offer accepted. Again, I didn't look up what it sold for, probably around $300, but tougher to find newsstand edition for a 1984 book. First full appearance of Zartan, great cover there. And now I got some Star Wars books. We got Star Wars number 2, the first full appearance of Obi-Wan, Han Solo, and Chewbacca in comics. I would like to grab this one to pair with my number 1 issue. This one sold for too high, though, in my opinion. It sold for $2,000. Another one just went on Comic Connect, and I think it sold for around $1,400, somewhere in that ballpark. And, about a year ago, this was like $2,500 to $2,800. So it continues to drop, but $2,000 is a little more than I'd want to spend. I'd probably aim for $1,300 to $1,500 for Star Wars number 2. And that's where I have seen a few of them sell here recently. Next up is a newsstand edition of Star Wars 40, kind of a secondary ESB adaptation book. This is part 2 of the adaptation of ESB. This one sold for $151.50. Really good deal there. That's the first appearance of Rogue Squadron. Great cover showing Luke getting ready to destroy the AT-AT. Next up, we've got a newsstand edition of Star Wars 41, the first cameo appearance of Yoda in comics. Another adaptation book that shows the Millennium Falcon navigating the asteroid field. 9.8 with white pages. That one sold for $255. That's a good price. I was thinking it would go for around $300, but in an auction, $255. That's the cheapest I've seen in a little while for Star Wars number 41. Star Wars number 42, the same seller had a newsstand edition. I sent this one out to my Patreon supporters along with the 41. And I said, hey, I would probably aim for around $1,200 or less. And sure enough, it did sell for $1,153. This is the first full appearance of Yoda, as well as the first appearance of Boba Fett in comics in the harder to find newsstand. Now's a really good time to grab that one. Even a couple of months ago, this was going for around $1,500 in auctions. Now it's going for $1,153, and this one was a pretty clean copy. It wasn't perfect. It had a little bit of an overwrap or underwrap. You can see the back is kind of overwrapped on it. So that probably kept the price down just a little bit, but still presents really nicely from the front. It's just on the back it had that kind of underwrap there. But $1,153 took that one home. And then here was a direct edition for the same book in a 9.8. That one sold for $838, and typically it's been going about $900 to $950. So in an auction is the way to grab that one in a direct edition. $838, again, that's a really good price there. Next up, this is an interesting one. This is Phantom Menace number 3, but this is a newsstand edition. First time I've seen one of these come up in a newsstand from 1999. They hardly any of them were newsstand editions, but this is the first cover appearance of Darth Maul in the photo variant. This is the less desirable of the two cover variants, but it's the newsstand edition, so it sold for a lot of money, $161.50. For a direct edition, it's under $100 now. But wow, I've just have never seen a newsstand edition for that book ever, and I thought that was a pretty cool pickup there. Next up was Clone Wars Free Comic Book Day, the first appearance of Savage Opress, Darth Maul's brother, dark cover, and this one sold for $155.50. And it had been going for $200 to $250, so that's the lowest price I've seen in a little while, admittedly in an auction, but a great cover there for Savage Opress's first appearance. A newsstand edition of Heir to the Empire #1, Grand Admiral Thrawn's first appearance, as well as Mara Jade. That one sold for $810, so gulp on that one. Same seller I bought mine from, and I paid it closer to $940 for mine. So that one has dropped even further. No one cares about Grand Admiral Thrawn now that season 1 of Ahsoka has come and gone. So if you want this book in a newsstand, not many of these on the census, now's a good time to get it. $810. Remember, even last year, this was going for $1,800. So amazing price drop. I cannot believe it's dropped by $1,000. I bought mine at $940. I was like, it's come down far enough. So even if it does drop further, I'm okay with it. But I can't believe it's dropped to as low as $810 now. That is a bargain of a price. Certainly the lowest I've seen in recent memory. So if you want that book at a newsstand, it's, again, there's not many of them on the census, less than, I think, 80 last time I checked. Now's a good time to grab it. Darth Vader #3, third print, first appearance of Dr. Aphra. That one sold for $182.50, much lower census count than either cover A first print or the cover A second print. Third print sold for $182.50. The fourth print sold for $493, which again is about right. This one during the heyday was over $1,200, so that one's come way back down. I wouldn't mind having that fourth print because I just love the purple color to it. I've got the first and the second prints, and then I also have the 1 in 25 La Rocca variant. So I don't know if I really need a fourth copy of this book, but I do love that purple color, and $493 took that one home. Predator #1, first appearance of Predator in comics from 1989, Dark Horse book. That one also has continued to drop a little bit. That one sold for $396.50, and this one had been going $500 to $550. So now's a good time to grab that one if you're looking for it. Transformers, the movie #1. This is the direct edition, the first appearance of Galvatron in comics. Again, I don't know if this will ever do anything, but I do like the way it looks. I love the cover on it. And this one sold for $189.85. That's the cheapest price I've seen in a little bit. So if you're into that one, Transformers, the movie #1 from 1986. R.I.P. Optimus Prime. He died in that, and I was like, I can't believe they just killed off Optimus Prime, but they sure enough did. So great cover though, and if you like that book, that one's a pretty good time to grab it in an auction. $190 on 36 bids. Finally, I had to show you this one. I could not believe the final sales price on this. This was Uncanny X-Men #142 in a direct edition, which usually goes a direct edition CGC 9.8, just universal label, goes for about $400 to $450. This one was a direct edition signature series label. It was signed by John Romita, Terry Austin, Herb Tripe, Chris Claremont, and Stan Lee and Jim Shooter. So this is an insanely awesome book. It had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different signatures, and it still was a 9.8. All of them gold marker on it. I mean, that is an awesome book, but I was thinking it might go like $1,200, maybe 3 times what a universal grade 9.8 for the direct edition of Uncanny X-Men typically goes for, which is again $400 to $450. So I was like, okay, I could see paying up maybe $1,200 for it. It sold for $23.25. So that is a wild price, but probably one of one on the census. So you're not going to find any of these on a census in a 9.8 grade. So pretty awesome if you're into autographs. I mean, I like autographs, don't get me wrong, but I think if I get something Stan Lee signed, I'm probably just going to be happy with just Stan Lee's signature on it, because anything with Stan Lee's signature nowadays, there is a huge premium associated with it. And when you get all of these comic icons all on the same book, clearly the market was willing to pay up for it. $23.25 was the final sales price. Thanks as always for watching. That's all I really had. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, and I'll be back soon.